It had hunted across 17 worlds, across frozen plains and molten chasms, across jungle moons where the air itself burned, and over floating cities made of crystal and light. The Ashari predator was ancient by its people's standards, a true alpha of its kind, genetically tuned for precision, cold-blooded, patient, deadly. And yet, on the day it met the human, something in it flinched. Something primal. Something ancient that had no name in its language but felt disturbingly like hesitation. The predator had come to Kirill's station on the third orbital ring of Varn's moon, a trade hub, neutral zone, place where thousands of species gathered to barter, feast, and lose themselves. It wasn't hunting for food this time. It was hunting for reputation. Rumors had spread of a new class of prey-violent, unpredictable, deceptively weak-looking creatures from an unranked world on the outer rim. They called themselves humans. No record of their species in the Apex archives. No formal introduction to the Greater Confederation. No military presence. And yet they had already been whispered about. The predator's kin told stories, vague ones, outposts where entire squads of Catharan soldiers went silent. Stations where the lights flickered and screams echoed, only to be found soaked in human blood, but not human bodies. Always other bodies. Scattered, torn. The predator didn't believe in myths, so it came to see for itself. It moved like smoke through the crowd of species, many taller, many more vibrant or intimidating in appearance. But the predator didn't need to intimidate. It had hunted apex organisms in every ecosystem it had entered. 1,000 kills, never once hesitated, until it saw the human. She wasn't doing anything threatening, just standing at a market stall, inspecting some iridescent fruit with mild curiosity. Short hair, brown skin, civilian clothes, not armored, no visible weapons. She looked like she didn't belong there, like she didn't need to be there, and yet every being within a 2-meter radius had subtly repositioned themselves. Not away from the market, away from her. The predator's oculars adjusted. It activated its internal threat matrix. Vitals, normal. Posture, relaxed. Body mass, unremarkable. Temperature, elevated. Muscle tension, high frequency. Microtremors consistent with combat readiness. The predator moved closer. Still nothing from her. She didn't even look his way. But as it passed within 5 meters, her hand moved ever so slightly, brushing a bracelet on her wrist. A hidden signal. The predator's instincts shrieked. Not fear, not from itself, but from something deeper. Genetic, old. It paused. The human looked up. Their eyes met. She smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It wasn't a polite one. It was acknowledging. Like she'd known it was there the entire time. Like she'd let it come close, just to see what it would do. And suddenly, for the first time in its life, the predator backed away. Not ran, not fled. It withdrew. It turned and faded into the crowd, mind racing with questions it didn't like, because something about her was wrong. Not biologically, not visually, but something in the way she had watched him, not with fear. Not with challenge, but with familiarity. As if she had seen his kind before. As if she'd already decided how to kill him and was simply waiting to see if it was worth the effort. The predator returned to its hidden perch above the station's main atrium. It had done what it came to do. It had seen the human. But now it needed to understand why its instincts had triggered, why its mind wouldn't let go of the image of her face. That calmness, that stillness. So it began to dig. Kirill's station had surveillance feeds, hundreds. But most were corrupt, hidden behind the patchwork security measures of a dozen conflicting governments. That didn't matter. The predator had its own systems. It hacked, quietly. Pulled files, searched for her face, and what it found changed everything. That same human woman had appeared on 3 other stations before this one, each time right before a major incident. The vaporizing of an arms cartel on Grax Hollow. The sudden disappearance of an Arthas war clan aboard Redline Citadel. The total system crash of Station Vex once ruled by synthetic mercenaries, and now a floating tomb. She was in every feed, in the background, always calm, always observing, never directly connected, until the destruction began. The Predator blinked its multiple eyes. This was no civilian. This was a weapon, and it had just scanned her. She had let it come close, had marked it, and the more it studied her, the more it saw that her presence always preceded chaos. But not random chaos. Surgical chaos. Measured violence, unrecorded, unclaimed. Which meant only one thing. She wasn't a predator. She was an apex. The Predator realized too late that by marking her as prey, it had become prey itself. And she knew it, because now the surveillance feeds had gaps. Little glitches. Moments where frames skipped. And in those gaps, she was gone. Gone from the market. Gone from the street. Gone from the crowd. The Predator turned. She was standing behind him, no weapon in hand, just her eyes focused, unreadable. "You scanned me," she said, voice low and almost curious. Why? The Predator didn't speak. Couldn't. His species didn't use vocal cords. But it backed up a step. She followed. Looking for something. A trophy. A thrill. She leaned closer. Her hand tapped something on her bracelet. The Predator's threat alarms exploded. Internal sensors flashed red. Microbursts of high-frequency, sonic disruption. Not enough to kill. Enough to disable tracking implants. She was wiping herself from every system. "You don't know what we are," she said, almost sadly. "You came hunting myths. But we stopped being myths when we stopped needing credit for the blood we spilled." She paused. "I'm not the only one here." The Predator turned its head but too slowly. Behind it, 3 more humans had emerged. One from the shadows, one from the ceiling. One just standing, as if he'd always been there. No armor. No insignia. Just eyes like hers. Predators. Real ones. The human in front of him stepped closer. "You should leave," she said. "Tell your kind. Next time they scan a crowd and they see a human, don't run." She leaned in. "Hide. This is a creature that didn't sleep. Its kind didn't need to." But after the encounter, its systems entered a degraded state that could only be described as the closest approximation to paralysis. It had backed down. It had been cornered. And worst of all, it had been let go. That made no sense. Predators don't spare prey once they're exposed. They strike. They kill or they disappear without a trace. But she'd looked him in the eye and decided not to kill him. That thought haunted the Ashari Alpha. It tried to leave the station that cycle. Its personal ship, the Hunger Still, was cloaked in a shadow orbit above the station, linked to its neural signature. But when it sent the launch signal, there was no response. Someone had locked out the system. Someone who had marked it and didn't want it to leave just yet. The message came not long after, a blinking light at its secure datapad. A frequency too clean, too local. Not a broadcast, a proximity ping. The message said only one thing: "You're not done here. Neither are we." The Ashari Alpha didn't panic. Its kind didn't have adrenaline. But something like instinct, raw and animal, crawled beneath its carapace. It wasn't being hunted for food. It was being tested. That's when it realized this wasn't about territory. This wasn't even about dominance. This was a demonstration. The humans had made contact not with the Confederation, not with diplomacy, but directly with the galactic underworld. The hunter's world. The unspoken ecosystem that governed fear, control, and respect across species lines. They hadn't walked in looking to conquer. They had walked in to be seen. And it had seen them. Firsthand, the Alpha returned to the lower sectors of the station where surveillance went blind, where mercs, smugglers, and creatures who lived without names bartered favors and whispers. It needed answers. But as it moved through the shadows, it noticed something strange. People moved around it. Yes, but not because they feared it. They feared something else. In every alley, every passage, it saw signs. Slashed symbols of ancient hunting clans marked over with crude paint-like streaks in a spiral pattern. A new mark. A human mark. Spiral wasn't art. It was a warning. One vendor, a bark-skinned informant from the Yadari Deep Line, refused payment and whispered fast. They broke the Veiled Talon last cycle. Wiped out an entire nest of Zarn assassins in less than a standard hour. No bounty, no claim. Just silence. Why? The Predator used its translator to speak a rare thing for its species. The Yadari only stared, 'cause the Talons tried to test one of them. A girl looked unarmed. Turned out, they weren't the ones watching her. She was the one watching them. Another pause. She didn't even run. Just stood there. Took off her coat. That was the signal. For what? The Yadari's gaze turned distant. For death. The Alpha left with the story ringing in its mind. This wasn't just a faction. This wasn't some new criminal syndicate. This was a species learning how to assert itself without the chains of law, without the politics of alliance. And they were winning. Not with fleets, with presence. It returned to its hide, deeper now, beneath the vented heat of the cargo district. It needed to think, to report. The Apex archives had to be updated. This wasn't a small threat. But the moment it began the Neuralink data transfer to its people, the message failed. Intercepted. No errors, no corruption. Just a new file inserted into its system, with a voice message. Her voice. You came to study us. We let you. But now you're ours too. You leave when we say. You speak only what we allow. Because the mistake wasn't scanning us. The mistake was thinking we wouldn't notice. The Predator froze. Even now, it wasn't sure how she'd gotten into the neural network. No tech in the quadrant was supposed to interface with Ashari systems. Their minds were semi-silicon, quantum-layered, unhackable. And yet, here she was inside. The Predator stood up slowly, then dropped to one knee. It had never submitted to anything, but something deep, buried in genetic memory, that what it had encountered wasn't just another predator. It was the next step in predation, one that didn't kill for need, one that killed for message. They say you can judge a planet by its scars. On Kira Station, those wounds were everywhere. In the grimy market level, the Predator noticed her first. She was beautiful. Not the pretty naive type that got captured in holovids, but dangerous. Every move radiated control, like she owned the space she occupied. And the way people reacted to her confirmed it. Even from a distance, he could feel the shift in their posture, the subtle widening of their eyes, the instinctive reach for weapons that never materialized. Fear, respect, recognition. It was intriguing, but she was just a data point. There were countless predators in the galaxy who cared about beauty. What really caught his attention was her stillness. She stood perfectly still for more than 23 minutes. That was long enough to determine three things. First, the voice embedded in his MinLink wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't some psychic interference, and it wasn't leaving. Second, he had been marked, tagged, but not with a tracker, not with a physical wound. With understanding, the worst kind of mark, because it meant the humans had learned his patterns, his escape routes, his fallback protocols. All of it had happened before he ever knew they were watching. And third, he wasn't the hunter anymore. He had become a case study. The Predator activated its cloaking protocols and slipped into the crawlspace networks behind the station walls. It didn't run, it repositioned. It needed distance, a new angle. It needed to understand the scope. How many humans were like her? Was this a military operation? No. The Confederation tracked all organized warfare. If humans had waged war, there would be paperwork. Sensors, wreckage. But there wasn't. This was something else. A movement. And it didn't have leaders. It had agents. The Predator eventually reached a forgotten section of Kirel Station known as the Downpulse Ring. A derelict docking zone where signals failed, power bled in painful pulses, and no security dared to patrol. The perfect place for ghosts. It wasn't empty. He saw them before he heard them. 3 figures gathered around a metal table lit only by a single hanging bulb, archaic, likely on purpose. 2 humans, one Zarn Merc with a cybernetic eye, twitching in panic. The Predator paused, cloaked, silent. The humans were calm. The man was lean, unshaven, wearing an old Earth jacket patched with different languages. The woman was taller, silver-eyed scar across one cheek. She was playing with a knife. The Merc stammered, "I didn't know she was marked. I didn't know. I thought she was just another." The man leaned forward. He tried to bag her on station grounds. She was alone. She's never alone. The woman didn't speak. She just drove the knife down into the table, missing the Merc's hand by less than an inch. He froze. The man said, "The spiral isn't a flag. It's a warning. We don't explain ourselves. You should have listened." The Predator observed silently, absorbing every detail. The humans didn't posture, didn't shout. Their presence alone dismantled the room. The Merc was a seasoned killer and he looked like he might cry. That was power. The Predator recorded everything and retreated later. In its hidden chamber, it decrypted the spiral mark using behavioral cues and linguistics. It found no central structure, no code of conduct, just a pattern. Humans who had fought too many wars, seen too much, burned too deep. Not soldiers anymore. Not civilians either. Just awake. They weren't looking to take the galaxy. They were watching it fall, ski, and choosing who to pull out of the fire and who to leave in it. The Ashari Predator remembered Earth's early files. Primitive, divided, too emotional, too reactive. And now, it'd become precision chaos. Everywhere they showed up, the old powers fractured. Crime lords vanished. Silent war zones resolved overnight with no survivors on one side. Entire regimes collapsed without a shot because the spiral showed up, whispered something. Sometimes silence was louder than violence. And the galaxy had finally started listening. Not out of trust, out of fear. The Predator, for the first time in its life, sought contact. Not with its own, with hers. It returned to the market level, stood in plain view, cloak off, posture lowered. An open body language display recognized by most species as a signal of non-aggression. Surrender, even. She arrived within minutes. Alone, still no weapon visible. But the crowd shifted again. That same subtle widening, like space folding around her. The Predator didn't move. She did. Stopped just 2 meters away. "You stayed," she said. The Predator opened its translator. "I want to understand." Her eyes narrowed. "No, you want to survive." Understanding is just the excuse. The Predator didn't deny it. "Then teach me." That made her smile. Not cruel, not amused, just tired. She stepped closer. "We don't teach. Not anymore. The galaxy had its chance to learn when we begged to be heard." She tapped her chest lightly. "Now we show. And those who survive the lesson decide what to do with it." The Predator asked, "And me?" She looked him over, carefully, like an artist deciding if the canvas was worth it. Then she said, "You backed away." Pause. That's rare. And with that, she turned. "Follow if you want," she said, "but only if you're ready to see how the world ends." The Predator followed, not to conquer, not to hunt, but to learn. For all that fire and steel, the predator was methodical. It moved like liquid darkness, shifting and striking where others couldn't see. For a moment, it had her cornered. Now the hunter was the hunted. Good. Let her prove it. Corel Station was designed to process minerals, not house refugees. So most of its lower levels were hollowed caverns. The predator used that. Leaping from pillar to pillar, it tracked her scent. Steam, oil, metal, but beneath it, something stronger, something alive. Adrenaline, fear, hope. She was fast, too fast for these tunnels, but it was faster. Now it found her cowering behind a twisted length of conduit, clutching a broken wrench. Its mandibles opened in a silent snarl, bearing needle-sharp fangs. Then it paused, tilted its head, and for the briefest moment the predator smelled blood. Not hers, his. It had been wounded. How? Didn't matter. This was its quarry. She was prey. And yet it felt a flicker of respect. Her defiance was almost a challenge. Like a cornered animal, she wouldn't beg for mercy. She wouldn't plead for her life. She would fight, to the death, if need be. Interesting, perhaps a worthy opponent, after all. Why? She asked, her voice echoing in the tunnel. Why are you doing this? The predator didn't answer. It circled her slowly, testing, waiting for her to make a move. Any move so it could strike. The silence stretched. The only sound was the hiss of steam. Why do you want to kill me? She whispered, and then she laughed. A humorless sound. Because I'm human. Because I bleed. Because I'm worth nothing to your hive. The predator froze. It recoiled, as if stung. Its mandibles clicked together, then snapped open again. It leaned closer, fixing her with its multifaceted eyes. You misunderstand, it rasped, its voice a grinding echo. This is not about value. You are not a resource. You are an anomaly. I do not hunt to harvest what you have. I hunt to understand what you are. She stared back, fear gone from her eyes, replaced by something colder. You can't understand what I am. Nothing can. I'm chaos made manifest. I'm the storm that breaks the calm. I am the reason your perfect order can't survive. The predator drew back, surprised by her ferocity. Your kind is fascinating, it finally said. You claim to be unstoppable, yet you destroy yourselves with your own hands. Tell me, human, what is this? She gestured to the wrecked conduit, the twisted pipes, the flickering lights. What is this place? The predator asked. She turned, her eyes hard as the void. This, she said, is a graveyard. The predator followed her down into the substructure of Corel Station, down into levels even smugglers forgot existed. Past dripping pipes and exposed conduits and flickering lights that hadn't been replaced in a generation. It wasn't just architecture. It was a graveyard. Walls etched with burn marks, corners still scorched black from energy blasts long buried in official records. The predator recognized the scars. This was once a battlefield, not publicly recorded, not acknowledged by the Confederation. But she remembered. She led him through a blast door sealed in rust, its metal edges clawed, not cut, and behind it, silence. A chamber with no sound, no lights, no gravity. Just floating shapes. Old weapons, armor, helmets, human, alien, shattered. A museum of war. These were the first ones, she said softly. The first humans who answered when the galaxy cried. When no one else did, the predator hovered just behind her. Who were they? She floated among the wreckage like a ghost. No one you'd recognize. We weren't strong, not then, not compared to you. But we had one advantage. She picked up a battered helmet. It had the words "Stay Down" scratched into the side with a knife. We never waited for permission. She looked back at him. The Confederation thought it could tame us, integrate us, civilize us. What they didn't understand is we'd already survived worse. Our chaos wasn't something we feared. We harnessed it. The Predator floated silently. She dropped the helmet. It spun away, weightless, disappearing into the dark. Your kind has no word for what we are, she continued, because you define strength by the ability to kill. We define it by the willingness to keep living when everything's already dead. The Predator processed her words. Slowly, "You are not predators," it said. She turned fully to face him. No smile now, just truth. We are resistance given form. And then she showed him. A hologram flickered to life images of stations destroyed, not by bombards, but by sabotage. Criminal syndicates that collapsed overnight, their leaders vanishing without explanation. Entire regimes that woke up to find their military chains of command had been unraveled. Every time, the spiral appeared first. Just painted somewhere, burned into a wall, etched into a flag. It was never claimed, never credited, but the message was always the same. The spiral sees, the spiral decides, and the Predator finally understood. This was a war without guns, a rebellion without a name. A species with no flag yet, they were everywhere. Not united by command, but by a shared scar. Pain, loss, and the choice to never let that pain go to waste. "Why show me this?" the Predator asked. She stared into him as if measuring the shape of his soul. "Because you paused. You saw us and instead of striking, you stepped back. That means there's a part of you that still thinks, that still doubts what you were taught." The Predator gave no answer, but he knew she was right. "What happens now?" it asked. "That depends," she said, "on whether you walk out of here and warn your kind, or whether you stay and learn what it means to fight like a human." The Predator looked once more at the floating battlefield, the helmet with the carved words, the scars on the walls. It lowered its head. "I will stay." And with that, the Predator was no longer alone. The spiral team moved like ghosts. No banners, no broadcasts, no fleet announcements or orbital warnings. Just silent signals passed through dead channels smuggled aboard forgotten satellites, whispered into the dark by people who had once been abandoned themselves. The Predator stood in the launch bay of a derelict carrier, now repurposed by the spiral. Around it, humans prepared with quiet intensity-checking gear, weapons, scanning implants. Some wore armor. Most didn't. It wasn't needed. Their weapon wasn't force. It was finality. Once the spiral arrived, there would be no retreat. No survivors on the wrong side. The target. Karen Node, a logistics center on the edge of lawful space. Outwardly, it processed trade. Internally, it housed over 2,000 living prisoners wired into a neural mesh, their thoughts powering an AI that controlled off-world slave routes. Not a war, an atrocity. And the spiral didn't negotiate with atrocity. The Predator stood next to her, again the woman from the market. He never learned her name. Spiral agents didn't use them out here. Names came after. "What if the Confederation responds?" the Predator asked as the dropship powered up. She didn't look at him, just adjusted a small silver ring on her finger, engraved with the spiral symbol. "They won't," she said. "They'll condemn it quietly. Issue a few statements. Pretend it wasn't theirs. And if they fight?" This time, she met his eyes. "Then they learn." The mission launched in silence. No lights, no alert. Just a cold descent through space, slipping through Karen's blind spots like a shadow that had always belonged there. The entry was surgical, not a single alarm. They moved like surgeons through the compound. The Predator moved with them, not the hunter now, but the scalpel. It didn't tear, it cut. They didn't fight for territory. They fought for the faces inside the server vault, faces that had once been people, now silent. The Predator stood watch as spiral engineers deactivated the AI core shutdown like a mercy stroke. The voices faded. Some returned, barely sobbing through blood and static. Some never woke. The predator didn't cry. Its kind didn't have glands for that, but it felt something. The same thing it had felt when it first saw her. When he realized she had let him live not out of mercy, but because she knew he would come back, because she saw something salvageable. When it was over, Kara Node didn't explode. That would have been dramatic. Instead, it powered down. The lights died. And in the sky above it, the spiral symbol appeared broadcast briefly in every local frequency. A warning, a promise, and then nothing. The spiral vanished again, because they never stayed to take credit. Weeks passed. Kirel Station buzzed with rumors. Confederation reps denied involvement. Slaver guilds shuttered their systems. Some said the spiral was a myth. Others called them terrorists. But deep down, everyone who knew. The Predator stood once again on the atrium deck, overlooking the crowd. It scanned the masses out of habit, not to hunt, but to look. And when it saw another human leaning quietly against a pillar, watching, he smiled. No one else noticed her, but he did. She saw him. She nodded once. The spiral never said thank you. They said you saw. And if you saw the truth and still stayed, you belonged. The Predator returned to the archives of its kind, not to warn them, but to correct them. He uploaded the truth, raw and unfiltered. Humans are not apex predators. They are reaction. When ignored, they become quiet. When threatened, they become dangerous. But when forgotten, they become something else. Something that doesn't wait to be recognized. Something that doesn't care if it is feared. Something that corrects the universe by refusing to die quietly. He ended the log with one phrase, untranslated. The spiral sees. Somewhere, across the void, a child asked her father if the spiral was real. He paused, smiled gently, and said, "Only if you're the kind of person they'd come for." And far above that world, on a forgotten transmission band, a faint signal pulsed once. A spiral. No name, no location. Just a reminder. If you scan a crowd and see a human, don't run, don't fight, don't speak. Just know you were seen.